Hi there, I'm Marjorie. Ever had a moment where your own family made you feel like a stranger at your own table? Mine did more than that. They cut me out of a vacation, erased me from memories I helped build, and smiled while doing it. But when I finally pushed back, everything unraveled. Why would your own blood want to silence you, even destroy you? Have you ever been the black sheep, made to feel like the problem just for speaking up? What time are you listening to this, and where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I read every one of them. The sun was brutal overhead, thick Georgia heat clinging to my skin like guilt. The backyard buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. They toasted my parents' 40th wedding anniversary under a white tent strung with lights. I was at the grill, flipping chicken thighs no one would thank me for. Smoke curled around my face, but I didn't flinch. No one called my name. No one looked my way. I wiped my forehead with the back of my wrist and tried to focus on the sizzle. The smell of BBQ sauce clung to my blouse. My sister giggled nearby, her new husband's arm tight around her waist. They looked like magazine people. I looked like staff. My father raised a glass. "To family," he said. Everyone clapped. Then my mother added, eyes bright, "And to our Bahamas getaway next month. All of us. Finally, a real family trip." Cheers exploded. I stood still, my hand tightening around the spatula. I waited for someone to glance back at me, laugh, say, "Oh, and Marjorie too, of course." Nothing. "When do we leave?" I asked quietly. My father turned to me, his expression stiff. "We don't." The silence that followed wasn't silent. It screamed. My mother looked down at her plate. My brother turned to refill his drink. Someone coughed. A bird chirped. "You don't need to know," my father added. "You're not part of us." That sentence sliced clean, like a glass edge through soft skin. I nodded once and flipped another piece of chicken. The grease popped violently, as if in protest. Inside my ribs tightened like fists. I stared at the grill, watching fat bubble and drip. Then I stepped back. 16 years ago, I missed prom because Mom had the flu and no one else could take care of Sam. I watched from the window in my dress as my date drove away. They never even asked what happened that night. They just thanked me for being so responsible. I walked into the house. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and birthday cake. In the kitchen, I scrubbed my hands harder than I needed to. The sting from the soap felt good, clean, punishing. I watched the water run clear. They didn't notice I'd gone. Of course they didn't. I didn't slam the door. I didn't say goodbye. I just picked up my purse and left. The gravel crunched beneath my bare feet as I moved toward the car. It was absurd. I hadn't even worn shoes to their celebration, like a child, told not to leave the yard. My fingers trembled as I fumbled with the keys. Inside, the seat was hot, like the world was trying to brand me. I turned on the ignition. A song played, something slow, about a woman who walked away before she could be broken in two. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anything. I pressed the gas. In the rearview mirror, the tent shimmered under fairy lights. They looked like stars, beautiful, distant. "That was the last time I stood behind them," I whispered, the words catching on the dry edge of my throat. And I drove, faster than I meant to. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but I still held the mug like it was the only thing keeping my fingers from trembling. The night air clung to my skin on the balcony, sticky and dense, like the weight of every unspoken word from that backyard. I kept hearing his voice. "You're not part of us," over and over, like it had been carved into the back of my skull. I tried to convince myself I didn't care, but even my lies had grown tired of repeating themselves. Earlier that day, just before I left, Delaney's daughter wrapped her arms around my waist and looked up at me with those impossibly wide brown eyes. "I love you, Mommy," she whispered. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't innocent. It was a landmine in a flower crown. Everyone froze. Delaney's champagne glass paused halfway to her mouth. My mother blinked like she misheard. My brother smirked, muttering something to his wife that made her laugh under her breath. I crouched down and touched the child's shoulder gently. "Baby," I said, forcing a smile, "I'm not your mommy." "Yes, you are," she insisted. "You're the one who always picks me up from school. You make my lunch." I stood slowly. No one said a word. Not even Delaney. The truth had slipped from a 6-year-old's mouth so easily, and no one could deny it. Not really. Not after all the times Delaney had meetings or needed space, and I stepped in without question, without recognition. Back in my apartment now, I couldn't shake that moment, couldn't decide if I felt betrayed or vindicated. Probably both, maybe more. 2 years earlier, I paid for Delaney's wedding. Not just paid, planned. I found the venue, negotiated the catering, booked the florist, even drove her to dress fittings while answering work emails from the parking lot, and on the day itself, I stood in the back like staff again. They handed out thank you gifts to people who'd RSVP'd late, but not a word about me. Not in the speeches, not in the toasts. Delaney never even looked my way as she danced her first dance in a dress I had picked up because she didn't have time. I wasn't in a single photo. I remembered standing behind a tree during the group pictures, my shadow barely visible in one image, cropped out like an afterthought, or a blemish. I had swallowed it then, told myself it was her day, that it didn't matter. Tonight I pulled the photo album Delaney gave me off the shelf. It was thick, gold-lettered, pristine. Page after page of her smiling beside people who didn't lift a finger to make it happen. I flipped through the whole thing, not one image of me. What kind of person disappears from her own history? I murmured. I reached for a pen and notepad, wrote at the top, things I gave up. Underneath, the years unfolded in bullet points. 23, skipped grad school to babysit. 28, loaned $6,000 for Delaney's credit card debt. 32, canceled my own birthday dinner to throw hers. The list kept going. My fingers tightened around the pen until it snapped. I stared at the broken plastic like it was a mirror. Then I pulled the last photo from the album, Delaney and her husband laughing under fairy lights I had strung myself. I tore it straight through the middle. No more being cropped out, I whispered. I opened my laptop, typed how to move out of state, and pressed enter. The search results still glowed on my screen. Moving services, job boards, apartment listings in Asheville. But my hand hovered over the trackpad, unmoving. It wasn't hesitation. It was the realization that I'd spent decades letting everyone else write my script. And suddenly, I didn't know the lines anymore. The next morning, I called in sick. No voice trembled on the line. I sounded calm, composed. But inside, everything was shifting like cracked foundation beneath polished hardwood. I spent the day packing in silence. Not everything, just enough to convince myself I had momentum. A few framed photos, the blanket Grandma stitched before she forgot my name, my birth certificate. I hesitated over one box labeled Delaney. Inside, a stack of thank you cards I'd never received, receipts for dresses I never wore, a bridesmaid bouquet so brittle it could shatter with breath. I didn't take it. 3 years ago, I sat across from Delaney in a bridal shop fitting room, zipping her into white tulle. She beamed at her reflection, not at me. I'd just driven 3 hours after a 12-hour shift because her fiancé forgot to pick her up. She laughed about it, said, "You're just better at this stuff anyway." No apology, no thank you. Later that week, Mom called. "Delaney's stressed. Can you handle the centerpieces?" When I asked if anyone else could step in, she paused. Then, "Honey, you know you're the dependable one." Reliable. The family Band-Aid. Present day, my doorbell rang at dusk. I didn't expect anyone. Peeking through the peephole, I saw my niece again, Delaney's daughter, clutching a tablet and chewing on her lip. Her father stood behind her, arms crossed, phone glued to his hand like he was too busy for eye contact. "Mom said to drop this off," she mumbled when I opened the door. The tablet was playing a video, footage from the anniversary party. I almost handed it back. But something in her eyes, guilt, confusion maybe, held me still. I watched it later, curled on the couch. Someone had recorded the toast from Dad. "To our beautiful family," he'd said, raising his glass. "Every one of you here tonight has been part of this journey." The camera panned, passing faces beaming with champagne lips. I wasn't in the frame, not even in the background. The camera had cut me out completely. I stood up, set the tablet down gently, like it might explode if I pressed too hard. It wasn't just that they ignored me. They rewrote the truth and edited me out of it. I opened my closet and pulled out the old wedding album from the highest shelf. Tucked between two pages was a Polaroid, me kneeling to tie my niece's shoe that day. I didn't remember the picture being taken. I looked tired, hair falling from a rushed bun, one hand balancing a cupcake tray. But I was smiling at her, not at the camera. I traced the image with my thumb. She had smiled back. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up writing, not just lists this time, but memories. Every moment they leaned on me, every time I stayed silent, every hurt that had been passed off as a joke. I titled the document, "The Frame I Never Fit In." But by morning, I changed it to "The One I'm Building Myself." The cafe was tucked between a florist and a record shop, the kind of place people went to propose or confess secrets under flickering candlelight. I chose a seat by the window. The glass was fogged from the kitchen heat, catching the glow of street lamps like spilled fire. I didn't order anything. I wasn't here to eat. He arrived 10 minutes late, as always. Dad looked like he'd come from church. Collared shirt, polished shoes, the scent of something aftershavey and artificial. He smiled like it hurt him. "I thought we could talk," he said, sliding into the booth. Talk. That word used to mean something. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. Without ceremony, he placed it between us and opened it. "I wanted you to see this," he said. Inside was a printed speech, the wedding toast from Delaney's reception, my name printed in cursive at the top. I blinked. "This isn't what I wrote." He didn't deny it, just leaned back and said, "We edited it. You had too much raw stuff in there. People come to weddings to feel good." I remembered writing it at 1 a.m. on the kitchen floor, after babysitting Delaney's kids so she could get her nails done. I'd cried while typing the part about how I raised my sister when our mother was too tired to care, how I worked overtime to pay for her dress fittings, how I never expected anything back. He turned the page. "We kept the nice lines, the generic ones." "You mean the ones that didn't make anyone uncomfortable?" I said flatly. He shrugged. "That's what family does. We protect the mood." I laughed, a sharp, dry thing. "You edited my pain for party optics." The silence stretched between us like fabric being pulled tight. Then he leaned in, voice low. "Marjorie, don't stir things up with the IRS." It took me a second. "I'm sorry, what?" He kept his hands folded. "You start poking into certain things. Inheritance records, transfers, we all suffer. This family doesn't need that kind of scrutiny." I stared at him, stunned. "You're worried about paperwork?" He didn't blink. "We'll make things right, quietly, no lawyers." That's when he slid the envelope across the table. My hand twitched, but I didn't touch it. "You think I want hush money?" "I think you want peace," he said. "No," I replied. "You want silence. You came here to muzzle me." His jaw tensed. "This is bigger than you." "Exactly," I said. "That's why I'm done shrinking to fit it." I stood up, left the envelope untouched. No hug, not even a glance back as I walked into the night. At home, the silence felt different, less like loneliness, more like space clearing itself. My phone buzzed, a text from Delaney. "He told me you were being difficult again. Just let this go, Mar." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop, clicked New Document, and typed 5 words, Family Legal Strategy, Phase 1. The call came just after 11 p.m., while I was brushing my teeth. Delaney's name flashed across my screen like a dare. "Hey," she said too cheerfully. "Small favor. Could you grab Jack's cake tomorrow? I forgot to order it, and Mom said you're always the best at this stuff." I stared at the foamy mirror reflection of my own clenched jaw. "Sure," I replied. "For Jack." Saturday bloomed hot and loud. The backyard shimmered with balloons, buffet trays, and bounce houses, everything meticulously arranged. Except, I knew none of it had been her doing. The cake was on time because I made 3 calls to fix the bakery's mistake. The gift bags had my handwriting. And yet, the whispers started before I finished setting the candles. "She insisted on handling everything," someone muttered near the drinks table. Typical Marjorie. She always needs to be in charge. I turned my head slowly, caught Aunt Trish glancing away. Then I saw Delaney, smiling too widely as she leaned into another cousin's ear. That was the moment it clicked. I wasn't the helper anymore. I was the villain in her story. The meddler, the narcissist. Even kindness gets twisted when someone needs a scapegoat. Later, as people gathered under the patio lights, Delaney clinked her glass. "Thank you all for making Jack's big day magical," she said, oozing warmth. "Special thanks to Cousin Drew for the decorations, and of course, Mom for being the glue." Polite applause. No mention of me. Not one. A woman I barely knew tapped my shoulder. "Didn't you organize this?" I smiled like someone being photographed at a funeral. Just helped out. Inside, I burned. Not because they forgot, but because forgetting me had become intentional. Outside, I stood next to my car, the noise from the party fading like cheap fireworks. I scrolled through the photos on my phone, balloons, cake, smiling kids, and deleted them all. None of it was mine. I'd been erased again. Then my phone buzzed. "Delaney. Next time, don't make it about you." I didn't flinch. I unlocked the folder labeled Evidence and began drafting something new, something cold, structured, and federally enforceable. To Internal Revenue Service. Subject: Family Trust Irregularities. I used to think silence was a ceasefire, but after the birthday party, Delaney's silence felt like coiled wire, tight, waiting to snap. I started saving everything: screenshots, receipts. Her texts were a study in sugar-coated cruelty. "Just trying to help," one read. "You always know how to fix messes." I knew better now. She wasn't playing fair, she was rewriting the rule book. The ambush came Wednesday morning. "Can you step into my office?" my boss asked, not unkindly. HR was there. They slid a printout across the table. Someone had accused me of misusing the company card, claiming I'd paid for personal travel, including a rental car and hotel in Orlando. Oddly specific, conveniently false. It took less than 2 hours to clear my name. The receipts told the truth. The timing didn't match. Still, I walked out feeling stained. Word gets around, even when it's untrue. I sat in my car, staring at the steering wheel, thinking, she's not just trying to erase me from family photos anymore. She's coming for my livelihood. Friday evening, I rang the doorbell of my parents' house. Delaney opened the door with a soft smirk, like we were still sisters playing house. I walked past her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice even. "Stay out of my career." She raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "You went too far. This isn't just petty now, it's criminal." Delaney's smile curled. "You've always been dramatic. Maybe it's time to talk to someone professionally." That hit harder than she knew. Our mother appeared in the hallway, drawn by the tension. I expected concern. Instead, she folded her arms. "What's going on now?" "She's threatening me," Delaney said, voice small, eyes glistening. "She tried to sabotage my job," I snapped. "Check the dates. The report lines up exactly with when she got shut out of that IRS mess." Mom's response was a sigh. "Marjorie, you always escalate things." I stared at her. "And you always pretend neutrality isn't taking sides." I turned back to Delaney. "One more move and I burn it all down. Bank records, trust documents, everything." I didn't wait for their reply. That night, I pulled every drawer open, old emails, Dad's handwritten notes about the family trust, voicemails from years ago where he forgot I was on the line. It was time to stop playing defense. Then came the email, subject line, "You should see this." I clicked. The audio file opened with Delaney's voice, hushed but clear. "She's unstable, Mom. You can't trust her with the estate. You need to change the will." My heart didn't race, it slowed. I hit replay. I played the recording for my mother, sitting across from her at her kitchen table. Her tea had gone cold, her fingers trembling slightly, as Delaney's voice filled the room. Manipulative, deliberate. She's not stable. She shouldn't be trusted with anything. When it ended, I waited. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She simply looked down and said, "You two always bring out the worst in each other." That was it. No defense, no shame, just distance. I stood and left. The family I had defended, protected, and carried on my back for years, gone. Grief didn't even register. It was a door slamming shut. 2 days later, I became a villain. Delaney posted screenshots, cropped, curated, calculated. Family betrayal, the caption read, when someone you love becomes obsessed with destruction. The comments poured in. Cousins, old neighbors, even my godmother writing, "This is heartbreaking," praying for healing. They believed her. My phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from people I hadn't heard from in years, demanding to know what I'd done, offering pity wrapped in suspicion. My hands shook. I couldn't breathe. I didn't explain. I posted one thing. The truth always has receipts. Then silence. At work, things shifted. Whispered meetings behind closed doors, colleagues offering forced smiles. Someone in HR called me in again. "There's a concern," they said. "Something about a disciplinary warning?" I hadn't done anything. I knew it, but I also knew who had planted the story. Delaney's fiancé's cousin worked 2 floors down. I saw his name on the email thread, pretending not to notice me in the break room. That night I called my lawyer. "No more waiting," I told him. "I'm ready to file everything." He paused. "You understand this gets public, right?" "I'm counting on it." But before I could send the documents, I broke. Sitting on the floor of my apartment, I screamed into a pillow until my throat was raw. The kind of scream I hadn't let out since I was 8, when Delaney pushed me off the backyard swing and told me to stay in your place. Back then, I stayed down. Now, I stood up. I forwarded the full audio file, the one of her coercing mom about the will, to Delaney's workplace's HR department. I attached legal letters, detailed timelines, notarized statements, and then I typed a message directly to her. "You poked the wrong ghost." Afterward, I logged into every social platform and deleted everything. No more curated silence, no more invisible screams. Let them guess where I was. Darkness outside, silence inside. Something was coming. The moment I stepped into my parents' house, I knew the air was poisoned with pretending. Laughter floated too loudly, silverware clinked too perfectly. I walked in calm and slow, my son trailing just behind me, his small hand grazing mine before slipping away into the living room. Every eye tracked me as I took my seat at the head of the table. No one stopped me. No one dared. I placed a neat stack of sealed envelopes beside my plate, their crisp corners sharp with intent. No toasts, no opening prayers. I simply looked around and said, "Let's begin." First, my father. "What is this?" he asked, his voice rough with forced authority. I didn't flinch. "Documentation, legal filings. You'll want to read them carefully." He reached for the top envelope, hands slower than usual. He scanned the contents, and then, for the first time in my life, I watched the color drain from his face. Delaney leaned forward. "You brought lawyers into this?" "You brought identity theft into this," I replied, sliding a printed screenshot across the table, her email requesting a credit pull using my social security number. "You hoped I'd be too tired to notice." A silence so thick it nearly hummed took hold. Then her voice, sharp and trembling, cut through. "This is ridiculous. You're bitter because you're alone." "No," I said, folding my hands. "I'm dangerous because I stopped being afraid." She lost it. Spit-laced words flew from her lips. Claims, accusations, lies tangled in half-truths, until she slipped. "You know what? I told Caleb to stop sending you money. I told him you didn't deserve it." Our mother gasped. The kind of gasp you can't rehearse. Her hand went to her mouth like she was holding in bile. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. But a single tear slipped down, carving warmth down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. "You never just wanted my money," I said. "You wanted to erase me." No one moved. Delaney stood, furious, and left the room without another word. Her purse knocked a candle off the table. It rolled, unlit, across the hardwood floor. My father cleared his throat, barely audible. "Marjorie, I'm sorry." But I had nothing left for him. I turned to my son, who had appeared in the doorway watching. I stood, walked to him, and whispered, "Let's go." In the car, the silence felt earned. Then, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "She's not done." I stared at it, read it twice. My hands curled around the steering wheel. The leather strained beneath my fingers, and then, for the first time in weeks, I smiled. The lake was still, the surface untouched except for a dragonfly skating over it. I sat with my coffee cooling in my hands, the mug resting on my thigh. My phone buzzed again and again on the table beside me, but I didn't reach for it. For once, the silence didn't ache. It wrapped around me like a soft robe after a storm. The envelope lay in my lap. The court had denied Delaney's appeal. I'd stared at those words for 15 minutes already, not for their meaning, but for what they represented. It was over. At least legally. I heard my son laughing inside, something about pancake shapes gone wrong, and I smiled. He had started calling me Mom again without flinching. We were mending in the places no one else could see. Later that afternoon, we dug out old photo albums from the attic. He wanted to see what Grandma looked like in high school. As we flipped through worn pages and faded smiles, a small manila envelope slipped from the back of a wooden frame. My breath caught before I even opened it. The handwriting was hers. I unfolded the letter with fingers that suddenly didn't feel like mine. My mother's words poured out, not grand or eloquent, but raw. She confessed to knowing everything, the money, the lies, the manipulation. She wrote of her fear, her guilt, and how the silence had eaten her alive. "I wanted peace, and I mistook peace for absence," she wrote. "You were always the presence I denied." Tears fell before I noticed them. Not hot with anger, cool with release. I hadn't been paranoid. I hadn't imagined it. It was real. I stepped outside again and walked down to the dock. I lit the edge of the letter and held it until the flame licked my fingers. The ashes caught the breeze and scattered over the lake. Some memories deserve weight. Others deserve flight. By the next week, I had started working with a local legal clinic. Most of the women I met there didn't need advice. They needed to be heard. I listened the way I always wanted someone to listen to me. I didn't try to save them. I reminded them they already could. At home, life was quieter, but full. My son and I cooked burnt dinners and laughed about it. We hiked trails that led nowhere. We built routines from the ground up, not the ashes down. I didn't try to erase the pain anymore. I repurposed it. One morning, while folding laundry, I found a pale gray envelope tucked into the mail pile. No return address, no postmark. Inside, just 4 words, inked in the unmistakable slant of my sister's hand. I still remember everything. I didn't panic. I didn't rage. I simply folded the card and slid it into the drawer, not to forget, but to remember where I came from. If there's one thing this journey has taught me, it's this. Silence can feel safer than truth, but only for a while. Eventually, what you don't say rots the foundation you're standing on. I learned that setting boundaries isn't betrayal. It's survival. And sometimes the people who taught you to love are the same ones who never truly saw you. But that doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you start loving yourself more. To anyone watching who's felt erased, overlooked, or underestimated, let this be your reminder. You have the right to take up space. You have the power to rewrite your story, no matter how late the chapter. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from family to find your peace? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a 1 in the comments if this hit home, or tell me where you're watching from. And if this didn't sit right with you, I welcome your thoughts too. Let's talk. If this video touched something inside you, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the stories still to come. Your support helps keep these voices alive. Until next time, remember, your silence isn't strength. Your truth is.